Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. Today, I have the honor of introducing my personal astrologer, who is Ana Ryzh, and she is absolutely amazing. I've been going to her for years. A lot of my astrological perspectives and everything really came from her and just her wisdom with handling transits and charts, and specifically difficult things in charts. Like she has just so much grace and wisdom when it comes to accepting things like that. And I think, and you can tell me any memories that you have, but the first time I came to her, I was like basically on the verge of tears just because I was looking into my chart and I was like, this is so scary. Like there's nothing happy about this chart at all. And now I absolutely love my chart. I can see like all the benefits from all the stuff that I've been through and everything like that. And I attribute so much of that to you. So thank you so much for the work that you do.
Oh, thank you. That is so sweet. And I'm learning to receive it. So I'm not gonna cut down on it. That's an amazing introduction. Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad I could help. I think that is the one of the biggest issues sometimes with people that what I've just described, the people that just enter astrology too quickly.
Mm.
And then I think as they go along in the process, they learn about the different aspects and layers of what things mean. But sometimes when you just enter into doing readings and you get overwhelmed with readings, you're not delving into deep enough, you're not learning enough. You're practicing a lot, which is great, but you're missing out on so much of the tapestry of it. And
Mhm.
you're seeing this narrow perspective where you can really create a lot of damage. And when you did come to me, I do believe that that was your Saturn return.
Yes. Hmm.
And that perspective that you came to me with, I understood it because I've had that. And I've had that not just from astrologers, I've had that for psychics, I've had it in so many different. I've received the negative, um, I suppose, a reading of the future in a negative sense, in so many different ways that I was hoping that I could avoid that as much as possible and give people a different perspective. Because life is such that bad things are coming and good things are coming too. But if you look at it only from a perspective of this thing is good, this thing is bad, you are missing out on the opportunity that we talked about when it comes to Jupiter. You're missing out on the expansion.
Mm.
I think one of the best examples is, and I'm probably saying that because I have that Chiron in the seventh house, but one of the best examples is right now there's a big trend in giving a mental health diagnosis to your partner. Like
Yeah,
you're toxic.
pathologizing.
Exactly. You're a narcissist, you're toxic. So I need to get rid of that. Or even not just your partner, but what's even more unhealthy, get rid of all your friends because you're now on a spiritual path and you don't need them anymore. You need to find new connections. I think that can be damaging done too quickly. If you find yourself in a relationship with someone who you deem as a narcissist or toxic or abusive, then you really have to ask yourself, why did you attract yourself? Why are you there? Why are you still there? That's a good question. All right. Well, maybe you have children with him or her, and maybe you are financially tied down together. Maybe it's harder to get out and you need a plan. That's fine. But what's interesting is that maybe you don't need to get out. And I'm not
Mm.
saying you do, like honestly, if you are in a relationship where it's physically abusive and it's scary, please, I hope you find
100%. Yeah.
yeah, I hope you find your way out of it. And you definitely do need a plan. And I hope you have support. That's why having friends is important, especially that you had for a long time. But if it's just something that's happening psychologically or verbally, or you're getting into a lot of fights, then maybe sit back and think about what are your reactions? What is it? What is the truth within yourself? And not even what your reactions are. The magic that I believe in is the inner work. That's alchemy. And that's alchemy belief by Carl Jung as well. He talked a lot about individuation and whole, and becoming whole, but there's also other layers to it and other aspects to it where you really need to see not just your behavioral patterns, but your beliefs and where they come from. It's really important. If you're very mercurial, it's important to write it down. If you're very Cancerian and heavy in water, it's important to cry it out. If you have a lot of Mars in you, it's important to sweat it out. Getting rid of some of that negativity and then seeing that shift outside of yourself. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And, as someone who has been through a divorce and kind of made all those initial mistakes of, you're the one doing things wrong. I am not doing anything wrong. Because my intention was pure, I thought that was correct. And, being in a second long-term relationship now, I look back at all the things that I did the first round that were harming the relationship, that I was personally harming that relationship. And it's like, things that my partner now is able to kind of look at and be like, hey, when you do this, it doesn't land well. Like I don't think you realize that you're doing it, but it's really not great for us when you do this thing or something like that. And it's like, if I had had that kind of clear communication the first time, or even the self-reflection to be able to see that I was doing things that were very toxic and narcissistic and, all those terrible things that we like to blame our partners with, and I know that I did. If I had had that wisdom that unfortunately does come with age and just living through things and just really taking a good hard look at yourself, then I love where I am now. So I'm not saying that, I wish I could go back, but, part of me does wish that I had known then what I do know now, because I definitely did just as much damage to that relationship as I was accusing my partner of.
I think we all wish that we could go back
Yeah,
and redo something. But the whole idea is that if you do go back, you miss out on that experience. And that's another thing that's really important to remember when looking at your transits or when living out your transits, right? You're gaining experience, and experience is invaluable. It's the price of gold. It's better than any money in your bank account. It's better than any assets. It's better than anything material. You cannot replace experience. And the fact that you know this now is the reason why you're not there anymore, if that makes sense.
absolutely. Yeah.
And we're all learning. I like what you're saying. I do have to mention, though, not all experience comes with age. And I think you're really wise beyond your years. And I know we're the same age, but still.
I was about to say.
I think you are really wise. And it's really important to remember that you have to be consistently learning and growing. You're never too old to learn and change and grow. You're never too old to bring down something new in your life from, and unpatterning that learned behavior, which is what's so important, which is why we came here today. Mars and Cancer. I was thinking about the angle that we could approach this, and let me know if I'm jumping too quickly into our subject.
This is
But
fantastic. Go for it.
all right, great. I thought about how I approached it. So I recorded this podcast that you were listening to with Eilish, and we talked a lot about redirecting our desires and in different ways that different rising signs even going to be doing that. But then I thought it would be important to look at it from another angle as well, which is Mars in Cancer is is not comfortable there. He doesn't like it. And but the discomfort is where we grow. It's growth pains. So what we will be experiencing right now is growth pains. And it's not negative. It's not scary, especially if we approach it with a certain preparedness. And the preparedness that we need is thinking back to what Cancer actually represents. And it represents our family, represents the culture that we grew up in, it represents memory in general. And the memory is not mental memory, right? It's not cognitive memory, but it's memory in the body. And this memory in the body in Cancer represents as learned behavior that I mentioned already a couple of times right now. And it's the learned behavior that we bring from our family. It's the learned behavior that we bring genetically for ancestral line as well. And it's the learned behavior, if you like to go that deep and look at it that far, from our past lives too. It's all those things, and they're so hard to change.
So tell me a little bit just about, like, when Mars gets into Cancer, Mars is extremely masculine. And I feel like Cancer is one of the most feminine signs because it's not just, the maiden or, someone who's like very loving or something like that. It's the mother. It is like that wholeness, that almost pain of being feminine. And so it's like when Mars comes into that space of extreme feminine, tell me just a little bit about that. Like, what vibes do you get from that?
Well, for one, as we already mentioned, it's an infolder, right? So it's not comfortable. It doesn't like being there. Mars like energy and movement, doesn't like being stagnant. It likes being in Aries, of course, because that's where it retro rules. It's like being in Scorpio, where, Aries, it's like pure energy. Scorpio is energy that consistently moving and transmuting, as you're aware, from personal experience. And Capricorn as well, it's energy that is being built, and it really, really likes being in Capricorn. Capricorn is probably its most comfortable place, even though it doesn't rule it, but it's exalted in there. So that's where it really likes to be. It's like, oh, I'm this kingdom of Capricorn. This is where we can build. This is where I can use all this energy and actually put it into something material. And then we have the opposite of that, which is Cancer, which doesn't want to build anything material. It wants to create a home environment. It wants to create emotional maturity. It wants to protect. And that's an important part, is that protection and the mothering. So the highest expression of Mars in Cancer is the mama bear. It's that, let me protect. I want to protect this. But then again, it's also the lowest expression too. Because when we become overprotecting, protective of something, are we controlling that thing? Are we trying to control the outcome of that experience? And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a mother, you are. So if you what do you know about this now, even though you still have a child who's very young? I, I bet there are points in time where you realize where this is something I need to let him do. This is something I need to let go of. And this is not up to me.
So
And
I actually have kind of a different perspective on this than most people, and I know I drive my husband crazy. I gave my son knives when he was 2 years old. They were supervised, but I am a firm believer that the earlier on you make mistakes, the less harmful they are. And so I when he would fall when he was a baby, I would never rush in with "Oh, are you okay?" or anything like that. I would be like, "You fell down. Yeah. Let's get back up." Just like all this stuff. My entire chart is ruled by Mars. I'm not sure if I said that out loud or just in my head. So that is probably why I had that, like, "You got it. You know, like life is going to be a bunch of falling down and getting back up. It's going to be learning how to be careful with something because it's sharp, because you can hurt yourself with it. That has actually never bitten me in the butt. He has never cut himself with a knife, and I attribute that to me starting him chopping things and stuff when he was very, very young. Um, but yeah, but I do have that sometimes, especially with other children coming in. So when he's, being bullied on the playground or other things like that that I've witnessed, I do still have that perspective where I'm like, I'm going to let him fight his own battles and I'm going to step in if he asks me to. And he never has, but I do have that immediate, like, do I need to stop everything? Like, does he have this? And so far he has. He's been pretty good about standing up for himself and stuff like that. So,
Nice. I love that perspective. Like I said, I'm not a mother yet, and I feel like in an ideal world, that would be me as well. But I already know that I need to work on a lot of my control. Even being in my relationship, I'm often being told, and it's funny because we both have that in my relationship. We both need to remind each other to let go of control. And in a way, that's care more than let me just tell you exactly what you need to do. Let me even when you work for someone like a micromanaging boss, that can be draining and exhausting because you can't let go and just fly into expressing the best version of whatever work it is that you're doing. And it's really, really important to work on that control around this Mars retrograde. What are you trying to control? What are you having difficulty letting go of? And
mm,
it doesn't have to be in the home, it doesn't have to be your children, it doesn't have to be your relationship. I'm not going to get into this too much, but I think it's important to mention just briefly that the societal climate right now is such where we need to battle each other and debate.
mm,
And it's not a debate for the purpose of let me find out, let me learn, let me listen. It's a debate for the purpose of I'm right and let me convince you. And it feels like people are not even trying to convince each other anymore. They're trying to tear each other apart, which is a very raw, very dark energy of Mars that we don't really want around. We want to work on that and elevate that to the point where it's okay for other people to do what it is they need to do. And every time you see something like you're seeing, your kid and on the playground fighting with somebody, and you have that urge to, I need to step in. Every time you have that urge, I need to step in, sit back and think about, do I need to step in? What is it that I'm trying to get from this interaction? What is it that I'm trying to get from, you're driving with your partner somewhere and he's telling you, oh, like turn left, turn right. Like, what is it that he's trying to get out of directing you specifically where to go? What is it that you're trying to get from arguing about that? Does that make sense?
absolutely. And you're right. It's the end goal. It's like, what is your intention behind this control? This is something that has been impressed on me more and more over the recent months is an easy life is almost mutually exclusive with a life full of joy. Because if you never have um, that opposition, that confrontation, that hard aspect or anything, you don't know the joy of overcoming it. And so, it's almost like a trust fund baby who grows up with like absolutely everything just handed to them. And then they don't really do anything with their lives. And I know that's not all trust fund babies. People have done some amazing things, but it's kind of that stereotypical, you never had to work for anything. So now you don't know how to work for anything.
Yeah. Well, that was always the concern with not just trust fund babies, but us millennials, we started this trend. We didn't start it, our parents did, of they let's give you a trophy for anything kind of kids. Let's give you a medal for whatever you're doing. Everyone gets a medal for this competition at school. It doesn't matter if you come for first place or not. And that trend continued with the next generations, which is Gen Z. And I feel like this pressure to accept everybody in a way that everybody wants to be accepted is the result of that. And unfortunately, this over mothering, right, which is Mars and Cancer, this over mothering has negative consequences as well. The intention is good. The intention is let's everyone be accepted, let everyone feel like they're winning. But then they don't really understand how to not they, well, you know what I mean by they. A lot of people growing up not really understanding what is it they want out of life and how to achieve it. They don't really have the basic skills. They weren't given a knife when they were 2 years old and told, hey, this is a knife. This is how it works. It's really sharp. If you cut yourself, it's going to hurt. That's it. That's all you really need to say. And you're not the only mother that I've seen that raise children that way. And it's amazing to watch them grow up being so independent. I feel like it's really important. I'm a bit on a tangent here. Please redirect me into wherever you like to go in this conversation.
No, that's terrific. And what you were saying, just about the shadow side of Mars in Cancer, it made me think about like all the animals when it's you think of the most aggressive animals, they're usually somebody with kids. So, it's like you can walk up on a bear and it's not really that dangerous unless there's cubs around. And then you're about to, be in some serious trouble. Um, but just also the idea of only a hurt dog bites. Like when there is this aspect of protection, and it could be self-protection, I don't want to learn how I'm toxic. I don't want to learn what I need to let go of. That is when we can be the most aggressive because we have that instinct of protection instead of, kind of that openness where it's like, okay, how can I turn this into action instead of into a fight?
Yes, I agree. And I suppose this is where I was trying to get to. It's going to be really important in the next 8 months. And yes, the retrograde's only 3 months, I believe, or 2 months or so. But Mars slows down, it goes direct, then it stays on the same degree for a while. Then it starts moving across Cancer. So all this time that Mars is in Cancer, it's going to be really, really important to understand where it is where you're hurting, what it is that you're trying to protect. And you might be saying, I'm trying to protect my relationship by, checking my boyfriend's phone. And I know this is like a no-no for a lot of people, but let's be honest, how many people actually do it? And it should be a no-no. And we can get into reasons why. I can go really deeper into jealousy and relationships maybe a bit later in this conversation because I think it's important to Mars and Cancer as well. But you might be saying to yourself, even, I'm trying to protect my relationship, but really you're trying to protect your hurt ego, or you're trying to protect that hurt child that maybe your dad walked out, when you were little, or maybe something else happened, or maybe you were hurt in a relationship as a teenager and now you're always carrying around this wound and bringing it into every relationship where you're attracting people to this wound as well, people that are acting in the same way, just to prove to yourself, well, this is how relationships are. maybe you're saying to yourself that you're trying to protect your child, but maybe you're trying to protect your inner child instead. Maybe that's something that happened to you, in a playground. Maybe somebody hurt your feelings and you need to really sit with that, journal with that, cry it out. Maybe you need to find a therapist or a coach around that. And it's great that there is that stigma about therapy has really shattered recently. In the last 12 years since Neptune, I feel like been in Pisces, really, because it's really important to work on that inner self, inner world. What are you carrying into the outer world? And like you said, you were telling me the story where your partner was saying it doesn't come across the way you think it come across. So what you're thinking with your conscious mind that you're doing is not usually what you're doing. And that's you can really trick yourself there. So this is where our biggest uh, growth pains are going to come from.
Hmm. Definitely. And you are speaking my language with like that Scorpio energy of like, going deep, figuring out what's under the surface. Like that is, um, it's so important because it's, you know, just because a certain percentage of people do consistently check their partner's phone, it's easy for us to write it off as like, oh, that's normal. That's a perfectly normal instinct. And there is something, there's always going to be something there. It's some kind
Mhm.
of mistrust, some kind of something that was sparked at some point where that is something we can go deep into and not normalize bad behavior because that's what we are in so much danger of doing these days. And that's why astrology, oftentimes for people who do not know very much about it, it does get a bad reputation because they meet somebody and they're just like, well, I'm a Scorpio, so therefore I'm an asshole. It's in the stars. Sorry, everybody, And it's like, no, like
Yes.
that's not astrology. Yes, you may be, all the way on the shadow end of something, but that's where astrology can help you teach you about your strengths that are now blown out of proportion, pushing you into the shadow end. But, just like using that again and turning that into action instead of this like protective, almost like boundary that you're just like pushing out and out.
Yeah, using your identity to excuse any bad behavior is quite sneaky. And it feels like you might feel like it's working for you and everyone else, but really just when you do that, just look around your life and you'll see how things are slowly crumbling around you. Because that's what I mean by not not having somebody told me it's called the inner palace. The inner palace is a really good word for it.
I
So
love
no,
that.
I love it's so pretty, so lyrical. We're both writers. We like it.
Yeah.
But not building your inner palace, not cleaning it up, not making sure the gardens look nice, not making sure, all the staff are happy. All the people inside of you, because we're not one person. We're many different. We're multi-layered. So if you don't do that, the dream around you that you've built, the the dream that you dream while you're awake, it's going to match that. It always matches that energy. So whenever I notice something's happening or crumbling in my life, I always ask myself, is it because I've made a change that works for me, that it's in alignment to my morals, my goals, who I am, and this needs to go away in order for something new to come in? Or is it because there's something I overlooked, something I bypassed? It's really important to notice. Back to the phones. I don't know why. I feel like it's going to be important to someone who's listening.
Yes.
So, if you're checking your partner's phones, here's what happens. Even if they don't know you checked, even if you didn't find anything this time around, because you're going to do it again, right? It's like an addiction. I need to do this because I need to make sure that I can trust him. Because what if I can't? This is what our are right, and I'm pretty sure 80% of people that do that are probably females. Maybe I'm wrong. I might be completely wrong. I apologize if I am. This is a statistic that just came out of my mind. I don't know how men think. But if you're doing that, you're putting out the energy into the air that I don't trust you. And you might think that I'm just checking your phone, but you're not noticing the language that you speak with your partner, like you're speaking your partner with. And I know I said males and females, but it could be in any relationship. Could be yeah, you could be a female with your girlfriend. It doesn't matter. You're putting out the energy in, and the language that you're speaking would be like, oh, who did you go out with? It wouldn't be coming from the intention of, "Oh, how was your day? What did you do? I want to share, I want to learn more about you." It would be like, who did you go out with? Where were you? And you think it's not felt, but it's felt 100%. You don't even have to say it because you're bringing that suspicion towards that relationship. So, and then there'll be other things, the comments that you make, the behaviors that you do, the things you get upset about. So it's not just one behavior, it's tied to a whole cocktail of I'm very insecure in this relationship. So the question is, are you insecure in this relationship because there was a mistrust that happened and you really need to sit down and talk about that with your partner? Like, is it even possible for you to overcome that mistrust? That's going to be a really important question. That's something to sit with yourself with. Or, which is what usually happens, are you bringing a mistrust from your life, your previous relationships, maybe your parents' relationships even, into a relationship that doesn't deserve it?
It's so true. And as somebody who has been mistrusted in the past, the thing that you think of when you want to tell your partner about your day, and you actually had a really crazy conversation with somebody, and it was completely above board, like there was nothing romantic involving it or anything. You think about those little behaviors and you're like, I can't even tell them about this, which forces you into a place of secrecy, and something that was completely innocent when it happened. Now you're keeping that secret from your partner because you know it's just going to, make them angry or anything like that. And so it's like, even though you are checking the phone just for your own peace of mind, you want to continue to trust your partner and everything like that. You're right, the little things that you say, the little questions that you ask can actually alter their behavior to a point of secrecy just because they don't want to make you angry when nothing's going on. And so it's like, definitely considering that dynamic, that those little actions, those little questions can start to create, and just kind of the end of that. Like, I want my partner to tell me about his day no matter who he talked to. Like, I want to know absolutely everything. I don't care about his phone. Like, I want to know that he's happy if somebody's yelling at him. Like, I want to know about it. It doesn't matter their gender or, how hot they are, anything like that. Like, I want to know what he's feeling and what he's going through. And, trust is a choice. And you trust somebody, you either choose to trust somebody or you choose not to. And if they've broken trust in the past, then yes, you need to sit down and decide if that is something you want to choose to do again.
Hmm.
But if they haven't, you need to figure out why trust is an issue for you right now. Like, why is that the hard thing?
Yeah, that is such a great point. That, and I love how you reword it, or I suppose added to the energy that you're giving out changes the behavior. That's really, really important to remember, because when you have to walk on eggshells around somebody and that is felt by the other person, it continues to breed even more mistrust into the relationship. And then not only mistrust, and now you are creating a wall between you two and you can't connect. And when you can't connect, how can you build something that is meaningful and beautiful where you can grow together? That is, yeah, that is a really important point, I feel like.
And there's also a difference between accommodating and respecting differences in each other and walking on eggshells and changing yourself to a more palatable person for your partner. You know, like I don't think we can be ourselves 100% of the time, no matter what, because we are in a partnership. You know, we have to, if they're having a bad day, we can't just unleash all of ourselves on them. Like we have to kind of, you know, be sensitive to that and create that almost Libran dynamic of like, okay, it's me and you. Let's balance this. You know, you're having this really dark energy right now. I'm not going to come fully at you with whatever stupid thing happened to me today. I'm going to be there for you. But at the same time, like we can't completely neglect ourselves to accommodate the other person because then that's just unsustainable. Like it's not something we can do forever.
It's a very Libran balance you're referring to, which is another sign where Mars doesn't like to be at, right?
Yeah.
So in overall, all in all, and Taurus as well is another one where Mars doesn't like to be in, which is another Venus ruled sign. Mars doesn't thrive in relationships, which doesn't mean everyone has a Mars in their chart. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to be single. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that you are Martian aspects, your aggression, and aggression is not always negative. Your will to create, your energy to um, grab what your dreams from life. That is purely your path. That is your hero's journey. That is something you're doing on your own alongside your partner. But putting all that Martian energy onto your partnership can be destructive. There should be a dash of it, of course. There's passion and there's sexual energy, which is very much attributed to Mars in a lot of sense, but I also feel like it can be other areas in the chart, which we can delve into a bit later. But putting that independent, I know better, I know who I am. No, you don't tell me what to do. You don't tell me what to say. It's not, relationship is not really a place for it. And I also agree with you where you don't want to become too accommodating, but you also want to have a certain amount of respect and it's very easy. The way you do it is for communication. It's listening. It's for your mercurial skills. It's sitting down and listening in order to understand. And that's back to Libra and Venus. Not listening to, all right, I heard you out. It's my turn to speak. Be very, very careful of that. Really try and understand and listen to your partner. I think this information will resonate to a lot of people right now during this retrograde, as well as just remember that Mars wants to be independent and by yourself. And if you choose to separate from somebody and that's something that's been a long time coming, great, that's your choice. We respect that. We love that for you. But also remember not to rush into a decision that is beneficial to one part of you while it tears apart another part of you. Be very careful of that balance.
It's so true. And it's, you know, if it, so, you know, having two long-term partnerships, it's very easy to know nobody is perfect. And so it's like, you know, it's kind of like when you get out of one long-term partnership and you're just like, oh, this person, they're the complete opposite. This is so great. And then you get halfway into it and you're like, oh, they're the complete opposite. Like that, that's not always a good thing. And it is kind of funny because, you know, things that my ex-husband uh would complain about with me. Now my husband complains about me. And so I'm just like, okay, this is definitely a me thing. Like this is not something that was just that kind of issue. And it's funny you're talking about, you know, Mars, where Mars likes to be and where it doesn't like to be. Well, I have Mars in the seventh house, Placidus. And for a long time, I just thought that was the biggest curse in the world. And I was like, I'm never going to have a good relationship. This is going to be really rough. And I forget what, oh man, I need to start writing down names of astrologers that I get kernels of information from that I just never forget. But there was somebody who said, if you have Mars in the seventh house, a really good way you can keep that out of your romantic relationships is to work really hard in a work partnership because that kind of expels that Martian energy elsewhere. And then you're able to come back into a feminine space when it comes to your relationships. And I started noticing a difference. When work got really slow, I would pick more fights. And I would just kind of have this like, okay, something's got to give. Like, we got to change some things. We got to, turn some things into action and all this stuff. And then, when I started working harder at work or things would come up that required a lot more of my attention, like, I just wanted to come home and cuddle. Like, I really wanted to just have the security of the relationship and not necessarily pour all this Mars energy into it.
That's very interesting. I've never heard of it before. That's something I think I would agree with, but I need to think on it some more and look at some chart examples for sure. I like that. Yeah, that makes sense. In so far, I think it's really important in general for everybody, not just for people with Mars in the seventh house, to express. I suppose that's what we've been talking about. Express your inner hero in a hero's journey. That's actually coming from Adam Sommer, my mentor. He refers to Mars being the um, projection of our inner hero and our hero's journey, as described by Joseph Campbell. And but I feel like, yes, taking that out of the relationship is really important, having that half that you need to have. And then question comes, because a lot of people choose to be stay-at-home moms as well, which I respect. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Even more so, I think that is natural and is beautiful. And it doesn't mean you shouldn't have things that also not add value, but add nourishment to your soul. And that's a little different from, I'm going to go out there, achieve, fight my battles, get my trophies, come home with an elixir, bring it back into the world, become the breadwinner. Nourishing your soul are things that don't necessarily make you money, or that maybe the goal is not for making money with them. Those are the things that really spark joy in you. So if you are a stay-at-home mom and you don't have an outlet for Mars at work, finding something that you're really passionate about and that really puts you in the flow can completely transform your relationship. Because oftentimes, especially I feel like for mothers that are new and that are on maternity leave for the first time, when, again, I'm speaking from a perspective onto other people's lives, not my own, but from what I've heard from friends and clients, when you're new to this experience and all of a sudden you have been building something out there, building a career, building a name for yourself, and now well, I'm just a mom. Well, you're not just a mom, you created a life. That's pretty fucking awesome. Excuse me. You can blur that out. But it's pretty amazing. But what happens is you're drained, you're constantly with the child, especially for the first couple of months, and then your partner, your boyfriend, your husband comes home, and you're like, wow, all right, great, entertain me. I've been doing this all day. I've been waiting for you, but I haven't seen any friends. I want socializing. And you start draining the energy out of that person. You don't mean to do that. That's not your intention. You mean to pour love into that person, but because this is your excitement right now, because your career has been put on hold or whatever it is that you were doing, maybe not even on hold, maybe you're like, I'm quitting. I'm never going back. I'm going to raise my children. Can you find something th- that, and maybe not in the first 3 months while you're breastfeeding and you've got this baby that's crying and you're overexhausted, but can you start looking for something that inspires you besides your family? Can you start seeking out something that really matters to you and sparks joy in you, where you can put that margin energy? In the first couple of months, it could just be working out, like
Mm,
sweating it out, journaling, something really small. It doesn't have to be the passion project of your life.
mhm,
So I recommend for people who are in this situation, I like to give homework. I recommend that you write down a list of 50 things in your whole life that have sparked joy in you or that you want to try. And the thought of them like gives you that sensation, that energy in the feeling in your body. And because I feel like that will resonate with people listening right now. We're not talking
absolutely.
about Cancer, Mars. We're talking about family. Um, and that's really, yeah, that's really something that's really important to keep a family together. Like you
Mhm,
don't want to drain each other. And that's exactly what you're saying. And I resonate with this so much as well, where you think, oh, the other person was always the problem.
mhm,
Looking at my relationships 10 years later, I'm thinking, like, there was definitely issues there, but I added so much more to it that I didn't have to.
mm,
And now that these issues are like they're small, they're instead of these giant monsters that come out, these giant dragons that are trying to destroy everything in their wake, they're tiny. So the new, person in my life can say, look, this thing that you're doing doesn't look great.
mm.
It seems you think, or like the jokes that I make usually that's my problem. Gemini moon. You think that's funny, but that actually is quite hurtful. Like, right, what is my intention of making that joke? You know? Like, was
Mhm.
it to be funny or was it to just punch at the jugular a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. And, I was a stay-at-home mom for the first year of my son's life. And I I had a really amazing, she was very spiritual therapist that she was like a part-time yoga teacher and she was just very open to energies and everything like that. She would give out little essential oil samples, like if she felt like it would benefit you. It was really cute. But she told me that if your identity is ever tied to any kind of relationship in your life, whether it be partnership, status symbol, like I am this person's receptionist, I'm this person's whatever, or I am this person's mother, if it's ever dependent on another human being who is fallible, who is mortal, who is, all these things that can, if that relationship ever crumbles, then our identity crumbles with it. And so I did kind of have that crisis where I was like, well, now I'm a mom, so does everything else stop? Like, does the rest of my life just stop because I'm so consumed by this tiny human being who I'm so proud of and I love so much, but I don't know who I am anymore. And so, that homework I think is so genius, don't come up with 10, come up with 50. Like, go for the gold here. Like, figure out 50 things that bring you that sense of flow and fulfillment and all those things that come with that, where it's like it's lighting up yourself as a person. And being a mom might be one of them. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I would try to avoid writing down being a mom because you do need to come up with 50, so that makes it 49. Because we already know that being a mom is something you like. I have a trick for that exercise, actually. What your brain will want to do is it's going to look at this like 50. I cannot come up with 50. I'm going to put this aside. I already know there's some people listening being like, oh, I'm not going to do this. This is insane. This is a crazy task. Have maybe in notes in your iPhone, if you have an iPhone or any other cellular device that has an ability to write down notes, or maybe a notepad if you like to write with your hand, have it open. And just the moment that you have an idea or come up with an idea, or maybe you'll find that the universe will actually bring you to these will bring you these synchronicities. You'd be driving past like a Muay Thai place, and I always thought I wanted to try this. Or you'd be driving past a tango place, and you say to yourself, you know what? Actually, I've always wanted to try tango. So write these down. You don't have to do all 50, but at least you have that list to refer back to when you're starting to feel drained, when you're starting to feel exhausted, when your partner comes home and he says, "Look, I'm so tired. I've been working all day. I really don't want to talk." You won't take that personally anymore, no matter how much you want to, no matter how much the the monsters in you, the the Mars in you wants to be like, no, there's no way you're too exhausted to talk to me. Like, don't you love me anymore? Try and turn that around. Try and turn it around onto yourself and just take a deep breath and instead give energy. When you're already exhausted, when you already put the child to bed, instead give energy to this person. It's like, all right, what do you need to feel loved tonight? And maybe all they need is like cuddle and watch a movie and give them that. And then the next day, refer back to that list, do one thing on that list that you can, and see how slowly your life will start to transform. And slow and steady steps are always best, which is why I say having a notes app open and having a journal by your side where you can write it down one by one is a lot better than sitting down and forcing yourself down to write 50. Yeah, that's a good exercise. We can think of, if you like, we can think of a few more different exercises that can be relevant to different people during this Mars retrograde.
Oh,
I have a few in my
yeah, tell
toolbox.
me.
Well, I always have exercises. So, what else? Let's see what other expressions of Mars in retrograde. Well, we talked about control.
Mhm.
What
So
could be a
here's a
really,
question.
yes.
You know how kind of the cliche of Mars retrogrades is don't do anything. Like what what is your kind of stance on that? Where, when Mercury is in retrograde, there's some things that we can look at and be careful of, and all these things where it's like, you want to be careful signing contracts. You want to double read emails before you send them, make sure the recipient is who you want it to be. Just little stuff like that, that Mercury can bring up energies like that. But then, some astrologers are like, you don't try to do as little as possible while Mars is retrograde. Tell me your perspective on that.
I think that's an interesting perspective, and I think it depends on each person's chart personally and what you're doing in your life and what your goals are. I wouldn't say try to do as little as possible, but there's definitely truth to the fact that you have to be more conscious of your actions, I would say. I'd rather put it that way. More conscious of when you go into the gym, are you overworking yourself? Like that's a really good Mars retrograde experience that can backfire. But also at the same time, you want to be working out because Mars is the closest. So when planets are retrograde, including Mercury, it's the closest to us. So sometimes when these, for instance, Mercurial mistakes happened, it's not so much a negative. It's rather what have you been missing while Mercury was direct? Because if you missed or maybe if you signed a contract that you shouldn't sign, or maybe if you misspelled an email, maybe you've been doing that this whole time. It's just that the consequences right now are a bit more severe. So same with Mars and retrograde, maybe you are working out a bit too much or not enough. That really depends on the person on the chart. So yeah, I would say being conscious of your actions is really, really important. When we think of Aries mythologically, Eris, um, when we think of Mars in Greek mythology, for instance, we know that a lot of the stories, a lot of the trouble that he gets himself into is due to the fact that he acts without thinking.
Mm.
He's had an affair with Venus, Aphrodite, and got in a lot of trouble from Aphrodite's husband. So the story goes is they had this affair, and eventually Aphrodite's Venus's husband found out. He put a golden net over them. They got caught and they got embarrassed in front of everybody. That is kind of like the Mars retrograde energy to me, is acting without thinking and ending up in situations that could be easily avoided. Does that answer
Yes,
your question?
absolutely.
Yeah. So in terms of that, exercises that I can suggest is definitely working out. Be
Mhm.
very conscious though of your if you're a woman, and I'm really getting into this right now, be very conscious of your cycles.
Mm.
Try not to work out during your menstruation cycle too much, like no pumping iron, things like that. If you can, go ahead, do it. Everyone's different. But if you just started working out at a gym, wherever gender identification that you have, doesn't matter. Be very conscious of how much you can lift. You don't want to end up with an injury, right?
Mm.
So be aware of that. But also, the counter remedy to that is meditation.
Mm.
And it's the sitting down meditation. And I actually had a very interesting debate the other day with somebody about how, well, you can meditate while you're walking and you can meditate while you're active. Absolutely. And you should. That's called active meditation. But sitting down and trying to be still, not moving with your thoughts, I feel like it gives you a perspective into your thoughts and into your awareness and into your goals in a very different sense. Yeah.
That's very true. I remember taking a meditation class in college, and they were like, you can have an eating meditation and a walking meditation and all that stuff. And then I took a meditation course from a yoga practitioner, and it was extremely different. It was you were going to sit in a chair or on the floor in this certain position. You can't just sit in any way. And it's amazing the results difference that I got from those two classes, because there was a marked difference that I got from the seated nothing meditation versus the one where I was actually performing some kind of action.
Yeah, exactly. And that's very Saturnian. But remember that Mars is exalted in Capricorn. Mars likes to be in Saturn.
Hmm.
Mark, think of it as, and hopefully I'm not offending anyone when I say that, but think of it as training a dog.
Mm.
If
Hmm.
if you've ever had a puppy, it actually really enjoys discipline. And it's going to try and push the boundary. It's going to see how far it can go, only because it wants you to train it. It wants you to tame it. So what we're doing right now is we're taming that inner puppy within us. We're taming that Mars energy. You're trying to see what it is that I need to be disciplined in order to direct my energy. So it's not so much as not doing too much, but it's more of doing things consciously and direct and where are you directing to? What's your goal? What's your outcome? Same as when we ask the question of when it comes to our emotional world and our behavior, what am I trying to achieve here? Same with our career and our side hustles and our dream life and whatever it is we're trying to build, what is the goal? What am I trying to do here? What am I trying to bring forward into reality? What am I trying to manifest? And I suppose doing this review of where did I come from to where I'm going is going to be really important during this time as well.
For sure. So, let me share my worksheet that I actually made. I feel like this is a good time to put that in. Okay. So, this is free on my website. I will post the link below and I'll send it to you for your podcast so you have that too. But this is going back to 2005, the Mars retrogrades. Here you're going to have the dates that Mars was retrograde. This does not include shadow periods. This only includes the times that Mars was actually retrograde, stationed retrograde in the sky. So if you would like to expand it to shadow periods, that is totally fine. That's a valid way to expand it. But this is just something that you can kind of use to figure out what role Mars retrograde has played in your life until this point. So, this is the location where it was retrograde each retrograde season. And then this is the natal house that it was in. So, whatever your preferred house system is, you can look at that. Sometimes it might stay in the same house, sometimes it might cross houses. And then you can just kind of write down any life events that happened during that time or anything like that as you're going through this. And yeah, you can notice some patterns or, really whatever. I love doing self research. So I love doing chart research on celebrities and other people and stuff like that. But I love looking at personal transits and all the times that they happened to me personally and the story that they told when they did.
This is brilliant. I love these that you make them. These are so fantastic. You guys are getting such a great deal getting them for free. Honestly, this is amazing.
Yeah, I told
Everyone's
her
gonna
about
love
it.
them.
I told you about it like last week, and you're just like, "Oh, good. How much is it?" And I was just like, "No, no, it's free. Like anybody can download it." And you're like, "Oh
This is
man."
amazing. This is amazing. I'm gonna use that because I was going to do, I love doing this too. I
Mhm.
don't know. Got that idea from me, from somewhere else. I'm not gonna take credit, but I love doing this. I love sitting down and looking at my transit. So I was gonna do it anyway and having your charts. Oh my God, it's gonna be so much easier. So
Awesome. That's the goal. So that's
yeah,
another exercise you can do, which is not exactly like harnessing the Mars energy, but just getting curious and asking Mars what it has done so far.
I just sorry, we wanted to pull out some charts if you wanted to have a
Yes,
look
please.
for the last minutes and moments that we have. This is someone that's been really in my radar lately. And I don't know if you've heard of him, not maybe non-marketing people haven't, or so basically his name is Gary Vaynerchuk, and he's an immigrant from Belarus. He's an American now. He lives in New York. He was one of the first YouTubers out there, and he built his whole business on top of kind of like on top of his dad's business. Basically, what he did is he did wine tastings on YouTube, which sounds like a crazy idea, but it grew. And he grew his father's uh, alcohol company. They sold liquor. And then he left that all behind. He left it to his dad. He didn't take any money from that and went and built his own marketing company out of it as well. And now his whole idea is to build this, I suppose, to build this grand uh, marketing company. But he's known for his motivational speech and he's known for the message that he presents. And a lot of that message is one, it's never too late to achieve anything. Don't look at what anyone else is doing. Look at what you're doing. Um, Very classic, but very nurturing, at the same time quiet, intense. So if you look at him, Tori, like when you do, did I send you his Instagram or was it someone else?
I think it
I'll
was
send
someone else, but please do. Please send it.
I'll send it to you because the Mars in retrograde Cancer is so prominent in his work. it's this mother bear that cares for everyone. And at the same time, he says, well, I'm here to build something, but I want to build it by caring and by being nice and by being kind.
Mm.
But he's also very tough with you. So if you're saying, I have this idea, I want to earn $1 million in 2 years, he'll say that's unrealistic and you're just being an idiot. Take that backwards a little bit and see if you can build a company that earns $1 million a year in 10 years. Um, I think that's a great example of this energy. And I think it's a great example of a very mature Mars in Cancer.
Hmm. I love that. And one thing that I'm noticing, it was like the first thing I noticed with this is if you look at his secondary progressions, probably around the same time he was coming to prominence, his Mars retrograde would have been crossing his MC in Gemini. And so if you like look into that, because Mars is slower moving, so it probably happened, late 20s, mid 30s, I'm guessing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, or at least transiting back into Gemini, before it comes completely conjunct with the MC. And I absolutely love that. And do you do the 5 degree rule when you look at houses?
Not always.
Not always. I'm the same way. Like I don't always do it, but I
Yeah.
notice and I'm like, I wonder if that's applicable. So I love this
Mm.
because that is a very 10th house energy as well. It's very 11th house too, when it's like, the masses, like preaching his message to the masses as well.
Yeah.
But it's also very 10th house because, that was his profession. I love this. I've never seen this chart. This is amazing.
Yeah, it's great. And I don't think the time is accurate,
Mm,
although it might be. There's a lot of yeah, there's a lot of times that are going around at the moment on astro.com. There's a lot of them are being added. I don't know where they're getting them, but it seems like
oh,
a lot of people are getting
interesting.
readings or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, somebody put out Joe Rogan's chart recently, and I was like, "There's no way Joe Rogan doesn't have his accurate time." And apparently, it was an AA graded chart. So I was like, "Okay, great."
Wow.
Awesome. That was amazing astrological skills right there, Tori. I
Oh,
just have to
thank you.
say, it was amazing. It was great. And yes, exactly that. And it is in Gemini. And he was one of the OG YouTubers,
Hmm.
and so it did come from sharing his information, not expanding, but sharing his knowledge and using communicative skills. He speaks really fast as well, which is so interesting because he is a Scorpio with Pisces,
That
where
is
you can see,
interesting.
yeah, you can definitely see that progressed Mars coming through as well in
Hmm.
his work for sure, for sure,
Definitely.
like that. Yeah.
I think it's so fun, just like nerding out with somebody over charts, and it's set like I do this with all of my readings as well. Whenever I look at a new chart that I've never seen, I get so excited about that person. I'm like, look at all the different ways that you have already manifested this energy. Like it's so exciting. And yeah, I just feel like it's such a cool gift to be able to look behind the curtain and see, just the different energies that are at play.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just pulling out some of his quotes that are
Oh
recent.
yeah, good.
And there's this image that he's put out of mandarins together, and they're like some of them are going bad, and the others are still fresh, but the one next to the one going bad is also going bad. So the quote says, "Who you surround yourself with matters," and it's just such a caring quote. I mean, I don't know the person, personally, but to me, it seems like whatever that signification is coming through.
So what is something that you would recommend for everyone just to keep in mind or kind of have as they go into this Mars retrograde. Because I do know some retrogrades, especially the ones that are not as often, like the slower moving planets where they're retrograde so much of the year, every single year. But this one is it the rarest? I think it's the rarest retrograde.
Yes, bro. It's the rarest out of the inner planets.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So what would
the
you recommend for that?
so I pulled a card actually, and I have
Awesome.
this herbal astrology guide. I don't know if we want to, post a picture on the channel or something
Yes,
of
yeah,
the
I'd love to.
description of it. I can send it to you, but the card I got was protection.
Mm,
And this one is rue. That's the herb, and it's ruled by the sun and Pluto, which is interesting. I think this is a reminder of not just, what we've been talking about, what are you protecting within inside, what are you overprotecting, but
mm,
also a reminder to do protect yourself and do protect your space and try to practice and learn, not even try, but practice and learn how to avoid uh, unnecessary conflict,
mm,
unnecessary debates, unnecessary conversations. I, w- I will use an example that another woman used. It's not my example, but it's a very simple, very basic, very life example that everyone can relate to. And that's why I like it. But I was listening to this course, and this woman was describing a situation where at one point she gave into her inner aggression and
mm,
answered aggression with aggression. She was driving her car and a man was driving next to her and eventually she cut him off, but she didn't feel like she cut him off. And he got really mad, started to drive behind her, beeping at her at one point, and then eventually he blocked her car, got out of the car, and he blocked her in such a way that it was she had to stop. And the reason why is because when she cut him off, even though she didn't feel like she cut him off, she flipped a finger. And she said, it wasn't even just like me. I would never do this. And so what occurred from that experience is that a guy blocks her car. She has to stop. There's this awkward interaction. She tries to run away, back out in her car and get out of the situation. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. No one's happy. In another situation, she parks her again with cars. She parks her car in in a very tight space, and there's just tight car parks. And what she needed to do was just to get out and get to the ATM. So she goes out, gets to the ATM, takes her like 5 minutes, gets back to her car, and there's a man standing next to her car saying, um, look, like you're such an idiot. Why did you park here? I can't get into my car. And begins raising his voice at her, becoming very aggressive. And this time, because of the other lesson that she had, she felt like if she tries to be really calm in the situation, I like wonder what will happen. So, despite the inner upset about this aggression and the ego being hurt, she smiles to him and she says, I can see how it would be really hard to get into your car. I can see the discomfort that you're feeling. I'm so sorry. Let me just look. I just parked here for 5 minutes. Didn't know anyone was gonna be here. Let me just get into my car, drive off, and I hope you have a lovely day. And this man's energy changes immediately. He starts apologizing. He says, "Oh, well, look, you're just such a small woman. I'm a big man. Like, it's probably easy for you to get in the car. It's hard for me." And as she's driving off, he's waving and smiling to her. Completely different experience. I know it's very banal and I know it's very ordinary, but these ordinary situations in life where you walk around about your day and you have the opportunity to either be kind or respond to your ego, those are going to be really important to take note of and to practice protecting your peace and protecting your energy. I hope that
I
story was interesting.
I love that because he he took her empathy and mirrored it with his own empathy. Because he's like, well, I am bigger. That's fair enough. You didn't think about that, you know. And I
Yeah.
remember it was actually during last Mars retrograde. It was actually I was having my Mars return and a Mars retrograde at the same time in my seventh house. And I was very nervous. And so I booked a reading with you right before it. And I was just like, what does this mean? Like, is my boyfriend, are we gonna just fight the whole time? Like, I'm so nervous, like, we had moved in together less than a year prior to this past Mars retrograde. And anytime you move in with somebody, there's growing pains and there's figuring out, okay, what are your habits? What are my habits? Where do they clash? And so I was nervous because there had been some conflict, nothing too serious, but I could see the Mars retrograde coming and what house it was coming for. And one of the exercises that you gave me was if I had something that I felt like I wanted to bring up, sit on it for a few days and see if a few days later I still felt like I needed to bring it up. And I swear to God, I did not bring up a single thing that entire Mars retrograde because it did not pass that test. Like, I would think of it on Monday and I would follow your instructions and I would be like, okay, if I'm still worried about this on Friday, I will bring it up. And there was not a single Friday where it was still important to me.
Let me just write that down and follow my own advice for this Mars retrograde.
There you go.
But yeah, that's a similar idea, whether it's a stranger. I suppose with strangers it's easier because you never see them again, but that is brilliant, and I'm not going to take credit for it. It came from you. I think taking a few
But that
days.
was what you told me. I will credit her with it, listeners. That is me
Right.
crediting her.
Um, but either way, it is important to sit on that for a few days before you bring it out, because emotions are going to be very heightened, and that's just the matter of the nature of the weather. And the reason they're heightened is because we need to work for something. It's everything that we just talked about, with you. And you guys, if you need to listen to it again, go, put headphones in, go on a walk, go into nature, and try and really take in the message beyond the message, and understand that what we're learning here is we're unraveling really bad habits that we picked up throughout
Mm,
our life. That's what's happening. And when that happens, our ego doesn't want doesn't want to let go, and that ego death is so painful. So we're all going to be experiencing little ego deaths the next couple of months, and that's going to be beautiful and worth it at the end.
absolutely. I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on my channel with me and your podcast. Thank you for having me on that as well. I appreciate it. And thank you
Thank you
for all you're
so
doing.
much.
I just
Oh,
I love the energy you're putting out. Like it's just so amazing. And I know I have personally benefited from it over and over and over again, just even in my own life thinking about things that you've said, like that advice, like I'm never going to forget that. That is definitely going to be something that I'm going to take not only into every Mars retrograde, but just a good relationship skill to have in general. Um, but yeah, thank you. Thank you for all you're doing.
yeah. Thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate that. And thank you for having me on your YouTube channel. I will post this on my podcast channel. So for you guys that haven't checked out Tori yet, you can watch me talk for the first time probably in a long time as
Yeah,
well. And it's gonna be great. I really
awesome.
appreciate you staying up. I know it's late for
Oh
you,
yeah,
but
no, no, it's totally fine.
I hope
And
we can
then
catch up soon.
if
Mhm.
people want to find you, where can they find you?
So I'll send you on the links that you can add to the description box, but it's anaryzh.com. It's very easy. That's my website. It's currently going through a lot of changes, so guys, don't get scared. You could still book a reading, but it's not as beautiful as my Venus and Libra would like it to be. And then I've got an Instagram. It's also Ana Ryzh. It's very simple. And you can DM me there as well if you have any questions. If you want to book a reading, and you're not sure which one, you can just ask me. That's totally fine. And then I've got an email, anarish@gmail.com.
Making it
All
easy. I love it.
trying to have the same name for him. Also have a Substack, which is not Anarish. It's called the Cosmic Dork Substack. So sometimes I write about my thoughts
I
on the
absolutely
sky.
highly recommend that. I love getting your, is it a newsletter? I don't know. I get it to my email and it says
Yeah.
Cosmic Dork, and I'm like, click, opening that
Aw.
immediately.
It's a newsletter for sure. I've got a new idea on how I want to approach that, but it's definitely a way to stay in contact with what my thoughts are around astrology and life and spirituality as well. Oh,
I
it was
love
so nice to see. I'm so grateful that I met you. You're such a beautiful person
it.
and you've been doing amazing. And I've loved working with you throughout the years. You've taught me so much, as well, and I don't think you realize that. So thank you. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you. Well, it's mutual and we have many more years, so don't worry.
Yes. Yes. We'll meet in this crazy, crazy world one day. I'm sure we'll meet in person.
Yes, definitely. I have to come out to your end of the world.
You're gonna love it. You might not want to leave.
It's actually astrocartography wise, it is on my Mars MC line.
Oh, well, there you go.
Hmm.
Maybe that's where all the beautiful YouTube/astrology things will happen for you.
Maybe, maybe.
Sounds great. All right, you have an amazing night,
Awesome.
and
Thank
I'll
you.
speak to you soon. Good night,
Okay,
Tori.
sounds good. Thank you.
Bye bye.